Welcome to Module 1 of your Durabuilt Windows and Doors training program. Once you've completed all videos, please complete the product quiz to test your knowledge.
Hello, my name is Sammy and I'm here to give you guys a product training on Durabuilt's window and door offerings. Right here we're going to start off with the Alpha series, the 500 series that Durabuilt has. It has three different configurations. You can either get a horizontal slider configuration or a vertical slider, also known as a single hung, or a picture window, which is a non-operating single unit piece of glass. It also has another variation with the 375 series called the double slider. It's also part of the Alpha family. We won't be talking too much about it today. However, once you get a general knowledge about this product line, you'll understand the 375 series as a double slider system. So what you're looking at here is a slider over picture-picture combination. It has an offset sash, meaning the mullion is not in the middle of the unit. This is the interior of the window. In order for you guys to understand how our software system works, we always look at products from the exterior. So with this window operating from right to left on the interior, it is actually called a left-hand slider from the exterior. So if you're entering this in CX, you'd be looking at it as a left-hand slider. When we're looking at slider systems, there's different ways to differentiate which side is the operating and which side is the non-operating. X usually means an operating unit. O means a non-operating unit. So again, looking at this window from the exterior view, you'll have the X side on the left and the O side on the right-hand side. So this will be an XO slider. Another variation that you might hear in the industry is a OF. O at that point stands for operating, F stands for fixed. So in that scenario, it will be an OF system. At Durabuilt, we utilize only the X and the O configurations, so this will be an XO. So looking at this unit, operates the left-hand side. The portion of the window that operates is what we call the sash. Any window that has an operating portion of the window, the operating portion will be called the sash. So in a slider window, operates left and right. We have a track system on the bottom, wheels on the bottom of the sash that I can take out the sash and show you. We have typically 4 stainless steel rollers that go on the bottom of the sash. Depending on the weight of the unit, we'll add another set in the middle just to make the operation smoother. We have the track on the bottom that the rollers run on. And then in order for, since I have the sash out, in order to get a proper seal between the frame and the sash, we have weather strips that go along the sides of the window. So along the top, along the side, and along the bottom, you get one weather strip. We have an additional groove that we save behind for our service technicians. If we notice that a window is not operating or not performing at its peak, we have another groove that we can add an additional weather strip in there. It does make the operation a little bit tighter to operate. However, you do get a much better seal if you're having that problem in the field. The portion that typically fails the most with a lot of our competitors, as well as us sometimes, is the portion where the sash meets the frame. And in this portion, you tend to see a lot of frosting and a lot of cold draft coming in. This is where Durabuilt took an extra step. And you can see on that portion here, we have 2 weather strips versus 1. And then there's an additional one that goes behind in here. So when these 2 units come together, you have a portion that sits like this and a part that sits like this. They come in contact like that. And what happens is this side has 2 weather strips here, this side has 1 weather strip, and you end up getting a triple weather strip system right at the portion that typically fails first on a slider system. Durabuilt, from my understanding, is the only company that offers a triple weather strip system in this interlock portion. So that brings me to the next step. This mullion right here on the frame is called an interlock mullion. The reason it's called an interlock, it's because that's where the sash interlocks to the mullion, hence the name, the interlock mullion. I'll put the sash back into place, and I want to show you guys on this side what happens with the sash when it's closed. So as you're closing the window, at one point we used to have the interlock mullion cracking quite often on us. Reason being is most people slam the sash really hard against the side of the window, and what happens is you'll get a crack down the middle of the plastic in the interlock. What Durabuilt brought on is something called a sash stopper. So this little component here, very simple to design, very simple function, very easy to put in, just snaps in simply on the side of the frame. And what that does is no matter how hard you hit the sash, it'll always stop before it ever bottoms out at the interlock. Therefore, you'll never get that cracking issue anymore in service. The other thing that we have on the top, that same exact component, we also added on the top of the window. When we use it on the top, we call this an anti-lift device. So this same exact profile, when we put it on the side, we call it a sash stopper. When we put it on the top, we call it an anti-lift device. And what that means, a lot of homeowners, what they like to do is they like to crack open the window slightly, and they put a piece of wood or something on the side here to prevent the sash from opening. Quite commonly used. But what a lot of people don't realize is somebody can easily, rather than slide the window open to get in, they can lift the window out. So if I don't have this anti-lift device, I can lift the window and take it out. But if I have the anti-lift device, most people that are uneducated with window design and window concepts, they won't know what is preventing them from coming into the house. But once that's in, I can no longer lift the sash out anymore. Very simple design, but adds a huge safety factor to the window. So, the Alpha system is an exterior glazed system, meaning the glass comes in from the outside, and then the glazing stops. The parts of the plastic that actually hold the glass in place comes in from the outside of the window. There's advantages and disadvantages with having that type of a design. We can have glass come in from the outside, which means heavier units can be easily installed from the outside, especially if we're doing any side glazing. However, the problem becomes in certain scenarios, if the windows are on the second floor or third floor of a house, it gets really difficult to service them if there's any issues that happen down the road. So, looking at this unit, we'll look at the outside in a minute, but looking at it from the interior, we have the slider portion on the top, our interlock mullion. And to just kind of divide up and to give you guys an explanation of what each mullion is. So in here we have a picture unit, meaning a non-operating unit, and another picture unit, again non-operating. This mullion becomes the picture mullion. Whenever we're separating two units that are non-operating, we use a picture mullion. Whenever we're using a sash and a non-operating, we need an interlock mullion. However, if we have a complete sliding system over a picture, or vice versa, a picture on top of a slider, we would need what we call a picture pick XO mullion, or a picture over slider mullion. So pick XO, all that means is you have a pick, an X, and an O. So the simplest terminology, pick XO, that comes from pick XO, X being the operating, O is the non-operating, and the picture window below. If this is a picture and a picture, the mullion in between is called a pick mullion. The reason I'm explaining these is because when you're dealing with CX and you're entering the items in CX, it'll ask you, do you want reinforcing in this window? So if you go through the reinforcing section, it'll tell you, do you want a pick XO reinforcing? Do you want a pick reinforcing? Or do you want a pick XO reinforcing? Typically, the system will determine, based on the dimensions of the window, if reinforcing is required or not. However, if you have a project and it's a smaller window and the system did not tell you if you need it or not, you can choose to manually insert it So that way, if a client wants the reinforcing reassurance, it's there for him. So yeah, on the interior, when you're dealing with Alpha system, majority of the windows that we make with Alpha are common frame systems. Common frame meaning you have one single frame that runs on the full perimeter of the window, and it's divided up into multiple mullions, multiple segments that break it up. So when you're looking at the system, you only really see 4 welds. You have a weld here, weld on that top corner, weld on the bottom corner, weld on the other bottom corner. So the advantage with that is it reduces cost. It looks nicer in my opinion, and it does require a lot less work in production to put the product together. So we typically would weld one single frame, and then we add mullions in between to break up all the different segments to it. So you'll hear the term common mullion, common frame. So these are your common mullions. That will be your common frame. And that's how you would divide up the system. If you are building something really large, the machinery limitations that we have in the plant can only allow you to build a window that is 125 inches wide or 125 inches tall by, I believe, 72 inches. So if you're gonna exceed those dimensions, then you have to go to a box-to-box system, meaning you build a single box with everything that you want inside of it, then you build a second box, everything you want inside of it, then you bring the two together, and they're joined together with silicone, reinforcing, screws, and a little strip that holds everything together. So if you go the box-to-box approach, you can usually run up to about 170 inches, 168 inches is what the system limitations are right now. And you can build multiple different configurations, combinations. Anything bigger than that would have to go through engineering to confirm that if we can build it or not. So in a common frame configuration, like I said, you get one single frame broken up into multiple mullions. To reiterate, that's our XO mullion, our PIC XO mullion, and our PIC mullion. And with the common frame configuration, it just reduces cost and it reduces time that's needed in the plant to put it together. So now I want to show you guys the exterior. So looking at the exterior of the Alpha system, the Alpha comes in different color combinations. You can get them in only laminated. The Omega system, which I'll talk about a little bit later, you're able to get both aluminum and laminate finishes, whereas Alpha, you're only able to get a laminated finish offering on it. And the reason behind it, it's more of our entry level or economy slider system. So we want to offer it with a few less options to make the Omega be more of a premium finish. So that being said, this is our jet black lamination exterior. When we're laminating, we're usually very careful with the corners, especially. Everything gets touched up really well. And the nice thing about having a window that's common frame, because we don't have too many welds to deal with, you don't have as much touch up to deal with. Everywhere that it would join components, usually there's a gasket, and that gasket is a black gasket or a white gasket, so black would blend in really well with all the with the laminated color. The goal behind color is, as long as you can't see white looking at the window at 90 degrees, then that window is successfully fully exterior laminated. So with this window right now, I have it opened. You can see a little bit of the white. That's considered acceptable. The only condition that we are given at Durabuilt, and the same thing should be iterated to our clients, is if the window is shut and you can't see any white, then we achieved the goal of having an exterior color that we need. When we're dealing with the Alpha system, I had mentioned when we were on the other side of the window that it's an exterior glazed system, meaning the glass comes in from the outside, then we put glazing stops on. So these components that you're looking at here, this is our glazing stop. It goes on the 4 sides of every sealed unit. You see it on here, you'll see it on the sash, you'll see it on the bottom units. Exterior glazed systems have a really good advantage over interior glazed. Why? Because if water also comes in from the exterior, it has an immediate exit, which is through these drain holes that you're looking at right here and right there. So water comes in, drains right out. Water goes in on the sash, drains right out. So typically for water systems, for water ratings, we achieve the best water rating with an exterior glazed system. Like I said, there are some disadvantages. If you ever need to replace this unit down the road, it does make it a little bit more difficult for our service techs to go out and do a replacement. But it is doable. We've done it for years. The 450 series was our first exterior glazed slider, and that was launched in 2014. And then just recently we launched our 500 series. With the exterior glazed, so the Alpha system has a little bit more of an intricate drainage system, and although water comes in through the stops, drains out, through the stops here and drains out, there is still a possibility for water to come in between the sash and the frame and sit inside the track where it slides. So that's where we need to now offer a separate drainage system. So underneath the track, there'll be holes that allow the water to drain through and go into the frame. So once it goes into the frame, it comes all the way down, and then this is where you see these drain caps right here. So let me just take this drain cap out. So water comes down, drains out. These drain caps, the beauty with the drain cap is if there's driving wind against the window, the flap shuts, and it prevents wind and water from coming in through the drain hole. As soon as the wind slows down, the gravity and the weight of the water will open the flap in the front and let all the water drain out. So this kind of a concept, this system works very well, especially in hurricane winds, where when driving wind and driving rain comes in, it shuts down. As soon as the wind stops, gravity takes in, pushes all the water out. So we have typically 2 of these on every window, 1 here and 1 there. And then any of the water that comes in between the sash and the frame makes its way to those drain holes and drains out. Anything that comes in between the glass and the frame will drain out through the drain holes that you see on the outside. The Alpha system has 3 major frame components. We have a standard frame, which comes as a 4 3/8 frame with a nailing fin. Then we have a monoframe. The monoframe is a standard frame. It's a fairly large frame, and I can show you guys a cross section of it over there in a minute. And then there's the brick mold monoframe. So the advantages of each one of them. So the standard frame, the 4 3/8 frame with the nailing fin, that one is our most versatile system. It lets us put all the different exterior trim options that come with the window. It lets us go box to box, like I said, if you're building really large units. It also allows us to just be a lot more flexible. You can do a lot more with that window. But obviously, because there's a lot more flexibility to it and you can add a lot of different trims to it, it results into usually a higher cost by the time you're done building that window. The monoframe, the nailing fin monoframe, that one is what most of our builders like to use because it comes standard from behind the nailing fin to the inside edge of the window is exactly 6 9/16, which is our typical wall thickness from the exterior sheathing to the interior drywall is usually 6 9/16. So majority of our new home construction, they build their windows at that wall specifications. So that gives us the advantage of just building one single frame. We're not adding any exterior trims. We're not adding any interior trims. It lowers the cost of the product significantly. And that system only works in a common frame combination. So a lot of our builders like using it because A, it reduces their cost. B, it is custom designed to specifically fit most new home construction walls. And C, because you're getting one solid frame, it ends up being a much stronger unit that even the least experienced installer out there, if they were to twist it and warp it and install it completely crooked, the sash will still operate smoothly because the frame is so robust. It almost doesn't allow the installer to cause that much damage to the install. What we're looking at here is almost a perfect simulation of what a cross-section on a typical new construction home looks like. So from here to here is exactly 6 9/16. And as I previously mentioned, majority of new home construction involves a 2x6 stud with 3/8 sheathing and 5/8 drywall on the inside, or vice versa. So it ends up adding up to 6 9/16 by the time you're done adding the blue skin and all the different components that go inside the wall. So that being said, we need the distance to be from the behind the nailing fin here to the inside of the window to be 6 9/16. So we designed this system to be exactly that. And what this does now is we have our nailing fin on the outside, which is the main component that's used to install the window. You got multiple holes that run along the front end, and the installers will put the holes through. Typically, installers don't add any holes on the bottom just to allow for a little bit of movement in the window when it's after it's installed. Once we go all the way in, we have it sitting almost perfectly flush to the inside, and then that's where the casing goes on, and it covers that transition between the inside drywall and the inside jamb extension. So this part right here is what we call the jamb extension. That jamb extension is built into the window. It is not an add-on piece. When we look at this window here, you'll see that it is an add-on piece. It's two different components. There's a little rubber seal. There is a potential for a little bit of wind and water and air to leak through in these systems, but we do our best to make sure that we don't get that. Whereas this system is a guaranteed system. It's welded right to the corner. Nothing is mechanically fastened, and you don't get any air leakage through this transition from the outside. So this being the monoframe, the one that we just looked at over there with the XO over pick window. Like I had mentioned earlier, if water got in between the glass and the sash, it gets into this surface, comes right out and drains out through the holes that we have on the exterior. The problem becomes is if water got in between this portion, we have a single weather strip there, water has a potential of coming in here. What happens at that point is underneath the track, this is our track that our sash slides on, we will punch a hole in this surface. The water will make its way down here. This internal wall is sloped to help the water drain out. Then we punch a hole through this wall again and comes out, punch a hole through this wall again, comes out, punch a hole on the front face, and that's where that drain cap sits. So water will go in this way and we force it right out again. So two ways to drain out on a slider. One, through the glazing stop. Second one, through the sash and the frame and drains out. So this brings up the question, do we need that second drainage path when we don't have an operating unit? So if we have a picture unit, we actually don't need that front drainage. So we're reducing that one step, as well as something that makes the window look a little bit better with less holes in the front of it. So because we don't actually have any operating portion for the sash, for the water to come in between the sash and the frame, then at that point we only need to drain through the glazing stop. We don't need an additional drain hole in the front of the window. One thing I didn't talk about, since we're talking about glazing, is the Alpha system comes with a dual pane or a triple pane system. This cross section here shows a triple pane system where you can see 1, 2, 3 pieces of glass. The overall glass dimension is 1 3/8. The dual pane is 3/4 of an inch, but depending on how big the units are, if we end up going with a 6 mil glass, 2 pieces of 6 mil glass, it ends up making the overall unit 1 inch. So dual pane varies from 3/4 to 1 inch. Triple pane is 1 3/8. The reason that we pick 1 3/8, and I'll talk more about this in the glass training portion, is with the spacer that goes between the units. Standard spacer size is a 1/2 inch. It's also the most optimal dimension for argon to function very well, which is the gas that we put between the 3 pieces of glass. So when we go 1 3/8, we get that optimal dimension that we need for argon to perform at its highest.
to go.
Okay, so our next topic that we'll be going over is our Omega system. It's our 850 series Omega casement line. So the casement line is more of our, upgraded, I wouldn't say the highest end, but it's our premium product. After this, there's the fiberglass system that is our premium top-end product line. So the casement is the happy middle, where somebody wants something a little bit better than a slider window, but not as expensive as a fiberglass system, and they would go with our Omega system. So the Omega system, the 850 series system from that you'll see in CX, comes in 3 different exterior finishes. So you can either get it as a vinyl white option, which does not have any color to it on the exterior, or you can get it as a laminate. The laminate being similar to the Alpha series, where it gets laminated on the exterior everywhere and the corners are usually touched up. Or the third option is the aluminum cladding. So aluminum cladding, you just get that commercial aluminum look on the exterior. No touch-ups on the corner usually, just because it's aluminum. They butt up without any welds, and then you just get the nice commercial look to it. Much shinier approach. There's really no key advantage with having one over the other in terms of 2 different color options. It all depends on what you want in the future. Aluminum does have the tendency to scratch a little bit easier, but it is a much higher end looking product. So as long as it's taken care of well, the aluminum will last you the lifespan of the window, no problem as well. Similar to our Alpha system. So our Alpha system came in a monoframe that was 6 9/16 from back of nailing fin to the inside. So some of our builders wanted that same exact concept to match with our Omega system. So our Omega system has the exact same logic from behind nailing fin to the inside, 6 9/16, and you get that full robust one-piece frame that is basically install proof. Any way to install it, it'll give you proper squareness to it. The other advantage and the other feature that's common between the 2 systems, between the Alpha and the Omega, is we have the same build out on the exterior. So that feature gives you an inch and 3/8 on the exterior to allow for any type of siding that comes into the home, whether it's stucco, vinyl paneling, camclad, any of that options will come in. And typically the color wraps around far enough so that if you end up having only a 1/2 inch worth of stucco, the color wraps around so that you see the color all the way around. Or if you end up putting any 1-inch foam insulation, anything else that you want to put on the exterior, it does get you right to the edge. So that's our monoframe system. When you're going with the aluminum concept, the aluminum does not work on the monoframe. So you have to get what we call is a standard frame. The standard frame is 3 1/4 inches from here to here. Comes with built-in nailing fin. You add the aluminum nosing on the outside, you add the aluminum capping on the outside, you get that nice aluminum finish on the exterior. And then whatever jam depth that you need to fill the rest of the wall, we would have to get an external jam extension. Now the beauty with this jam extension, you can go as small as 4 1/2 inches from behind of the nailing fin, all the way up to 15 inches. And you can keep adding what we call our H clips that lets you keep connecting jam extensions to the depth that you need. Ideally, you don't want to push your window to the farthest point of the install, because you want to try to bring the glass to the center of the wall. That's where all your core insulation is in the wall. So typically most people that that have a really deep jam, they will put a larger extension called an ICF extension. So it puts a 3-inch on the exterior, pushes the window in, and then you end up with a much smaller extension on the inside. So you see that typically in basement combinations, with your foundation being a really thick concrete or cement wall. This is our standard frame with the aluminum exterior and an add-on jam extension. The jam extensions, typically most of any of the standard sizes, come with a rubber flex on the inside. That rubber flex helps seal against any air barrier, any air that can come in through the corners. But in this scenario, you have to go custom. Of course, when you're custom cutting pieces, you lose the flex on the inside. And then the third option that we have is our last sample right here. That one gives you both a color on the exterior and a color on the interior. And in this scenario, the client did not want a jam extension on the inside. Instead, they want to wrap their drywall in. It's a lower cost alternative. Typically, a lot of the basement windows take what we call it's a drywall return. Basically, the drywall comes up on the inside and it returns into the window, hence the term drywall return. And in this scenario, the client would have wanted to put 2-inch foam insulation on the outside. Just, the high-end homes, if they want a thicker insulation, just to get more heat into the home. So this is what we call an exterior panning. This panning allows you to add up to 3 inches of insulation. Typically 2 inches is my recommendation, and then you can put your siding on top of the insulation. So this gives you that little extra extension on the outside, but not as deep as the one that I previously mentioned for your basement windows. So typically this would end up going on the full package on the house, because they would usually put the 2-inch insulation everywhere in the house. In this scenario here, we have an exterior lamination as well as an interior lamination. As long as the window is shut from both sides, if you do not see any white, it is considered an acceptable window. In this scenario, you swing the window open, you will expose some of the white on the inside, but we have had no issues with clients complaining about that, as when the window's shut, they're happy that everything is the color that they want. Just like our Alpha series, it is available in dual pane and triple pane. Same exact concept. Dual pane will be 3/4 inch OA overall thickness of the glass. If we have a much bigger unit, then it'll turn into a 1-inch overall, because we're using a thicker glass. And then anytime that we go triple pane, it'll always be 1 3/8. And these are all imperial dimensions that I'm giving you guys. So just like the Alpha again, you have the capability of building this system as a common frame, where you're building just one single unit and you're adding mullions in between to break up all the different combinations. Or you can take our standard frame that has accessory grooves on inside and outside, and this lets us build multiple different combinations and then join them together as a box to box. So next I'm going to show you guys what a common frame window looks like, and then I'll show you guys what a box to box window looks like in this configuration here, so that you guys can get a better understanding of when to use common frame and when to use box to box for the Omega system. So what we're looking at here is an Omega system that is made out of common frame configuration. And the way that I can tell just by looking at this window if it's a common frame or a box to box is, again, your key thing to look for is your corners and your welds. So in this scenario, I look at my corners. I have a weld right here. I have a weld right here, a weld on the bottom corner, and a weld on the bottom corner here. Everywhere else that I'm separating junctions or different configurations of the window, I don't have 45 corners anywhere. I have a 90-degree corner here, 90-degree corner here, 90 degrees along this side, 90 degrees along this side. When you're looking at common frame will only have 4 welds. And yeah, welds are always going to be at the 45-degree cuts. So that is your number one hint when you're looking at a window, if it's common frame or not. Look for the corners and look for what's dividing the different configurations, and is the joining of where they connect 90 degrees or 45. If it's 90 degrees, it's a common frame. So just like the Alpha, we have our main frame and we break it up into mullions. In 850, we only have one mullion. Our Omega system, we only have one mullion, and that mullion is called a T-mullion. So this T-mullion can break up a combination between operating and non-operating units, and the same mullion that I use vertically, I can use horizontally in this scenario, and I can break up 2 non-operating units. So one profile allows me to do multiple options where I can add an operating unit to it, or I can add non-operating units to it. In this scenario here, we have a picture next to a, again, looking at it from the exterior, this would be a right-hand casement. We're looking at the inside of the window right now. From the inside, this casement is operating to the right, but because we always look at windows from the exterior and our software system looks at units only exterior view, this would be a left-hand casement mold to a 3-picture combination on top of each other. When we're laminating inside and outside, so laminating on the inside, we'll also laminate our screen. Screens come out by using these 2 pull tabs. You pull them, screen comes out. They have spring-loaded corners on the ends. That's how things line up. And then when we're looking at our operating sash, because we have the ability to more swing versus a sliding action, we can get away with more of a rubber seal. So rubber seals tend to perform much better than the brush seals. When you're dealing with a slider window that we looked at earlier, slider has a lot of movement in a sliding direction. Because of that, just like with any rubber, when you're putting rubber next to rubber and you're trying to slide it, it doesn't slide easily. So you have to have more of a brush style weather strip. But the brush, it does have its limitations. It's not the best option for water barrier, but it is really good for air and dirt and bugs and other stuff like that. With a casement though, this is what makes the casement more of an upgrade to the slider, is because we're doing more of a swinging action, we have that ability to do a compression. Just like your car door, when you're closing it, there's a rubber seal on the perimeter. This acts the exact same way. You need the rubber seal on the sash. So our sash, just like our slider system, if it's operating, we call it a sash, has 2 rubber seals on it. One that goes on the inside and one that goes right in the middle, and one that goes on the far end. I can show you guys on the other side here. On a casement window, we have 3 weather seals. As you can see right here, we have 1 brush weather seal in the front, 1 fin seal in the middle, and 1 bulb on the inside. All of these have to be replaceable so that over time this will deteriorate. And you can get a Home Depot weather strip anywhere in any hardware store. It'll be a cheap alternative for you to be able to replace these 10 years, 15 years down the road rather than replacing the whole unit. So we have our bulb here, our fin, our brush. Our brush just serves as our primary bug and air barrier. But then these 2 are the ones that are really doing all the water protection on your window. So when the window rotates shut, those seals come in tight and they press against the frame. Once you lock it, they do that suction that you see even on your car door. When everything closes shut properly, you get that proper seal between the door and the frame, or the sash in the scenario in the frame. When you're building a common frame configuration, our sash ends up having to be, our sash is an interior glaze system, so our glazing stops go on the inside. That means that if you want to protect this window from any water coming into the home, then you need to put what we call a heel bead. Heel beads are basically silicone that goes under the glass, along the bottom, and up the side. So anytime that you have an interior glaze system, it's recommended that you heel bead your product. It does drive the cost up. So for commercial projects, we always heel bead. Every single tower that we've built always gets heel beading, just to make sure that we don't get any random water leakage in any window. In a residential, you tend to be more in a closed terrain. You're not as open to outside elements, so you're more protected against the wind. You don't get as bad water penetration against the window. You could get away without heel beading the window. But that's on our sash. The sash is an interior glaze system. It goes in. On the picture portion, when you're doing common frame, it pushes the glazing stop to the outside of the window. And that's strictly by design how it works. So this, again, that's where the disadvantages could come in, where replacing this unit down the road could become difficult. However, with it being on the exterior, just like the slider, it does outperform the interior glazed. You never need that extra silicone on the inside. Water drains right out, just like the slider. There's a drain cap. Water goes in between the glass and out on the outside, and I can show you guys on the exterior, the drain caps, in a minute. So just like the Alpha system, when this system is installed as an exterior glazed system, we end up with needing drain caps on the exterior. These drain caps work just like the Alpha system, where water comes in between the glass and the stop, comes out and drains right out of here again. So because we are planning on using this system more in a higher rise commercial application, we wanted to go with the system that does flap open and lets and blocks the wind from driving the rain and the water back into the home. Typically we don't actually need this, as long as there's a hole for water to come out. That's all we need. But this gives us that added protection of blocking the wind anytime that you're dealing with a high rise, and high rises are tend to be more open terrain, and they drive a lot more wind and rain in. So exterior glazed non-operating unit, casement window. I'll go over the main names of each one. This is called a direct set window. The reason we call it a direct set is because you're directly setting the glass in a casement frame. So the only way you can achieve a common frame combination is if you're able to put a casement in the same frame as well as a picture window in the same frame. So in this scenario here, because we're common frame configuration and I have an operating in the system, so the operating becomes an interior glazed with the sash, and the non-operating becomes an exterior glazed with the picture window. So we directly set the glass inside the casement frame. So if you look across here, this is one single frame that runs across the whole thing. On this side, we have a casement that closes shut. On this side, we have glass, and we're directly setting that glass in the same frame in this cavity right here that you see. So that's one of the terminologies. When we're dealing with the Omega system, there's actually 4 non-operating windows, and I'll go into detail into them in each one, and then 2 operating. So the operatings that we're looking at in this scenario is a casement, and in this scenario the non-operating is a direct set. So the 4 non-operating, and I'll go through them in detail, are going to be your direct set, your fixed frame, your picture frame, and your fixed sash. So I'll repeat that again. Direct set is what you're looking at here, and then I'll go over the picture frame, the fixed frame, the fixed sash, and then in terms of operating, we have a casement operating and then an awning operating. The difference being awnings swing outwards from the bottom up, casements swing left or right from the sides. Looking at the hardware in the window, on a casement window, I'll go over the different types of hardware options that we have. In this window here, we have a dual arm operator with a hinge. The hinge is what connects the frame to your sash underneath. A hinge track, which the hinge moves on, and you can see the hinge moving here in the corner as you're going across. So the one misconception of a casement is that it just swings open like this, when in actuality it actually slides on a track and opens up at the same time. So a lot of people assume that casement windows, they just pivot on a corner and they swing out, but in actuality there's a track that they need to slide on. As they're sliding, they're cranking open. So the purpose behind that is it allows you to, when it's completely open, get full access to the outside of the window from the side here. So a lot of clients, they want to have that ability to be able to clean their windows from the inside of the home. This gives them that ability to clean it easily because you have that room on the side of the window to get into it. Now, if this is a smaller window, we'll go over different things about egress in a little bit more detail. Once the window is shut, we have what's called a sash lifter. So these are just little rollers that as soon as the sash comes to them, the rollers help lift it up, and it just positions the sash into place so that it locks properly. A lot of clients, in the summertime, they'll keep their window opening 90 degrees. When it's open at 90 degrees, it tends to start to sag down a little bit just from the weight. What this does is at the end of the day, when they try to close it, it just helps realign everything and it pushes everything up. We don't typically put this on every window. Anything over 26 inches in width, that's where we start noticing the sag. we add that after 26 inches in width. On this side here, we have what we call a lock bar. The nice thing about window terminologies is if you don't know what it's called, if you describe it, it's good enough for it to actually give enough information to know what it is. So if this has your locking points on it and it looks like a bar, likely it's called a lock bar. This here is called a lock bar guide. And the reason we call it a guide is it guides the bar to stay exactly where it needs to be, and it moves up and down through it, and it holds it in place. So lock bar guide. These are what we call cam heads. Cam heads are what line up to our keepers. So our keepers get installed on the sash, and the cam head, as it drives up, locks itself in place into these keepers. So again, if you ever forget the terminology, a keeper keeps the sash shut. So what keeps the sash shut? A keeper. Our cam heads are what get engaged in them. Our lock handle on the inside is what drives the lock bar, and it moves it up and down, as you can see. We have multiple cam heads that run along the entire height of the lock bar, and we can have 1, 2, 3, 4 cam head locations where we can add 4 lock points to the sash. So on a window like this, typically we only utilize 3 of the cams, and then if we ever feel that the window is not locking properly, we have an additional cam that we can utilize and add another lock bar or lock point to it. That lock bar typically contains 4 cam heads on it. We only utilize 3 out of the 4. The 4th one at the very top of the lock bar is sometimes utilized for a corner drive, where if you want to connect a corner hardware, which I'll explain in the other window across the showroom, or you can utilize it and put an actual keeper on it as well. So this one here lines up to this guy, and then this one here, you can see we're not utilizing at all, which I could put another lock point right there to lock to it. The lock bar is typically controlled by our lock handle on the inside. So as you turn the lever up on the lock handle on the inside, it drives the lock bar up and down. So you need to utilize one of the cam heads to be able to connect to the lock handle. So typically a lock bar, like I said, comes with about 5. One of them has to get used to connect to the lock handle, and the other 3 of them are always used for locking the window. A 4th one can be utilized for the corner drive, as well as an additional locking point if you just want 4 locking points on a window. On this side of the window, the hinge and the operator are able to suck it in on the bottom and suck it in at the top, but you have nothing in the middle that's preventing your window from in and out movement. So what we utilize is something called a snubber. There's many different variations of the snubber. What we purchase at Durabuilt is called a concealed snubber. Concealed meaning it's completely hidden. You don't actually see it when the window is shut. So the way that the concealed snubber works, you got one snubber that has a curvature this way and another snubber that has a curvature this way. And as the window comes shut, they lock into each other, just like a slider interlock, they lock into each other. And that means anytime I'm applying pressure in this direction on the sash, you can't, because it's locking into place. So the advantage with these snubbers is any force that you apply on the sash, and I'll show you after I close the window, how tight it is on this portion. If we didn't have the snubbers, it'll have a lot more movement. So as I close this window, you can see how these two are approaching each other to make that contact where they interlock into each other. So they come close, and you can see how they line themselves to each other, and once in contact, So right now, one sits like this and the other one is sitting perfectly next to it. And if I didn't have that, if I did this, this would actually deflect a lot more than what you're looking at here. So this keeps and maintains that compression so that if there is any driving pressure from the inside of the home or even driving pressure from the outside of the home, that's what's keeping your seal on the hinge side of the window. For the Alpha 500 series, it comes in multiple frame combinations, as I had mentioned in the other side of the showroom, and the two major configurations that frame comes in is a standard frame, which is the most customizable. You can add different trims and different nailing fins and different exterior trims and different interior trim options. The second option is our monoframe system, and the monoframe comes 6 and 9/16 with built-in nailing fin for our new construction team. And then the system I want to show you here is for our renovation team, all of our renovation sales representatives that we have. This is a key selling feature for you guys. Reason I say that is because it comes built in with a 2-inch renovation brick mold. Now, when a client takes out an old window out of their home, typically we can't reuse any of the inside of the rough opening. So the installer will have to install a new 2x4, 2x6 framing on the inside of the opening that they take out. And what they end up using is a brick mold. And the brick mold is how the window gets installed into the new framing that they put in. So when you picture it, in this portion here is where you would put the new 2x4, and this will be where your old stucco or your old siding that they would cut into, and you don't actually touch the exterior trim so that it doesn't get damaged. So that being said, having a built-in brick mold that's part of the frame prevents any water from coming in between the brick mold and the frame. And if water ever came in this way, then it would get into your rough opening and it'll start damaging your insulation and everything in your walls. So having this built in prevents any water from coming in this way. If this was mechanically fastened onto the window, then you could have a barrier in between, and that barrier, if you don't have it sealed well enough, water could come in between and it could damage your opening. So key selling feature, it's called the brick mold monoframe. When you're selecting it in CX, the system will automatically select it based on the type of trims and things that you're looking for on your window. CX will automatically pick this brick mold for you, and it'll tell you if you're going to be getting the standard frame, the mono frame, or the mono nailing fin frame. So this is our mono brick mold 2-inch renovation brick mold frame. So what we're looking at here are all the different types of operators that typically you'll see in a casement or an awning window. We'll start off on the far left side here. My left is our awning operator. The awning operator usually looks like a scissor arm. It compresses open and close this way. The reason behind this design is because awnings typically swing outwards from the bottom out, and they're hinged on the side, swinging outwards. So this will only work on an awning window. Next, we have our dual arm operators. So very easy to see that it's a dual arm. You have one main arm that goes out this way. It's usually a single piece arm. And then the other side has an additional arm that has a bit of an elbow to it. So dual arm operators are the strongest operators that you can get for your window. So this dual arm operator is typically used from 26 inches wide to 36 inches wide. We can sometimes push that limit on the width to maybe 38, 39, depending on the height. But 36 is what's set up in our system, and you can custom order anything that you need bigger than 36 inches. So dual arm operator, 26 inches and wider. That is, I would say, the strongest operator that we carry. One key feature that Durabuilt has that nobody else has is the narrow dual arm operator. So you can see between these two, the arms are much smaller on the narrow dual arm, so this one here, it is a much smaller arm than this one there. Durabuilt is the only company that has an operator that is good for 21 inches to 26 inches wide. Typically, all of our competitors, as soon as they have a window that is smaller than 26 inches in width, they downgrade to this single arm operator. So with Durabuilt, from 21 to 26, we have another dual arm. And like I said, the dual arm performs way better than any other operator. So we're one of few companies that has an ability to give you dual arm operator from 21 inches in width and wider. So regular dual arm, narrow or mini dual arm. Once we hit 21 inches, this will no longer be able to use. So we switch down to a single split arm. So it's a single arm, split. So if you're ever curious what the terminology, single split arm. Single split arm is good for windows that are 16 inches in width up to 21 inches. So that covers you right up to this guy. So 16 inches to 21 inches, you utilize the single split arm. Nothing wrong with it, but because we're dealing with a smaller window, we're able to utilize more economical hardware because we're not having to go wider than 21 inches. If I was to use this for wider than 21 inches, I'd start to get a little bit concerned, which is the main reason we brought on this mini dual arm operator. So 16 to 21 inches, anything from 12 and 5/8 to 16 inches, we have what's called a single arm, non-split. So I'm showing you a bigger one here. We have another variation of this that is much shorter. It comes to about here, and that's called the single arm. And that one is good for 12 and 5/8 wide to 16 inches in width. Anything bigger than that, we'll start moving our way up the operator types. The one I am showing you here today, though, this one is our 9.5 single arm. This is utilized only if you need egress. And what egress means is emergency escape to a house. So if your casement window is being used in a bedroom and you need to utilize that window for an emergency escape, there are code requirements that say that the width of the opening, so after the casement cranks open, the width of the opening cannot be smaller than 15 inches, the height of the opening cannot be smaller than 15 inches, and the square footage of the opening cannot be smaller than 3.8 square feet. So these operators typically give you that wider side to a window where you can get your arm through and clean the side or reach the outside of the window. But all of that technically is dead space. It's open space that you can utilize to make the opening bigger. So if we move that sash closer to the edge of the frame, we'll get a much bigger opening on the inside. So this is where this operator comes in handy. This almost gives you, rather than, the slide and open action, you're getting more of a corner pivot action. It still glides a tiny bit, but you still would not be able to reach the inside or the outside of the sash. So you utilize this for 22 inches in width to 32 inches in width. This is the only width that you're able to utilize this hardware in. And again, you only really need to use this if egress is required. So to go over the hardware options one last time, this operator is our single arm operator, typically only utilized for egress openings to achieve the egress width dimensions that we need. It is only able to use, you're only able to use this between 22 inches in width to 32 inches in width. This one here is good for 16 inches to 21 inches in width, and it's our single split arm operator. Our narrow dual arm operator is utilized from 21 inches in width to 26 inches in width. And then our standard dual arm operator is good for 26 inches in width all the way up to 36, potentially up to 40, depending on what you need. Anything over 36 would have to go to special engineering workflow to get it approved through engineering. Then we can talk about the hinges. So when egress is required, the system does a lot of math in the background. So there's a question in your software that will ask you, do you need egress for this window, especially if it's going in in a bedroom. Automatically, if based on the width, the system will determine which operator you need. And then as soon as you say, I need egress, then it'll start playing around with the different hinge options that you have. So a 14-inch operator usually uses, a standard dual arm operator usually uses a 14-inch hinge. So these two go hand in hand. But if we are a window that is bigger than 26 inches, let's say 28 inches in width, I have to use this operator because it's the strongest operator for me. However, I'm a short window and I do not have enough height to achieve the square footage area that I need. So if I use this 14-inch hinge, that's our standard hinge. It'll do the calculation in CX and it'll come back and say unit does not meet egress. What the system will do then after that is it'll grab the 10-inch hinge. So if you line these two guys up together, you can see, picture this being the window that's open this way. So with a 14-inch hinge, I sit here. With a 10-inch hinge, I sit here, which means I gain almost 2 inches in width in the opening just by switching out my hinge. So system will do the math based on 14-inch hinges. If it does not meet egress with the dual arm operator, it'll switch you to the 10-inch hinge. The 10-inch hinge goes in here, it'll trial it. If it meets egress, it stops there and it says unit meets egress and it'll give you the right hinge with the right operator. If per se that 28-inch width window still does not meet egress with this additional hinge, now the system will look at an egress hinge. So now if you look at this third option, this egress hinge, so now we're comparing the 10-inch to the 10-inch egress. I gained another 2.5 inches almost. So if you put the three side by side, you can see this is our 14-inch hinge, our 10-inch hinge, our 10-inch egress hinge. So every time you change hinges, it'll push the sash further out closer to the corner so that you can gain more width on the opening. So the disadvantage with this hinge, it only operates with the single arm operator. Now my limitation on the single arm operator is that the window has to be between 22 to 32 inches in width. So in the scenario that I'm giving you today, it's a 28-inch window. It does the math based on the 14-inch hinge, doesn't meet, does the math again based on the 10-inch hinge, does not meet. Then the third iteration that it does is it'll switch you to this operator. It'll check first, is my width between 22 to 32? If it's yes, it'll switch you to this operator with this hinge and it'll do the math one more time. If after the third iteration it meets egress, the bill of material is set up with these two components. If it does not meet egress, you'll get a hard stop restriction, or basically a stop in the system that tells you you do not meet egress, you cannot proceed with this window. So these are key knowledge components about your hardware that you're getting, especially if you require egress. You got 3 different types of hinges, and those 3 types of hinges get determined by the system which hinge that you get based on your answering the question, do I need egress or do I not need egress? So. Okay. So in this window, I want to show you guys something that Durabuilt brought on board that I would say no one in the industry is doing right now in the casement line. One key feature that we have is we're able to build casements that are up to 90 inches in height. To achieve that 90-inch height and still lock and operate smoothly, we brought on something called a corner drive. Corner drive comes from a concept that was brought on from our European line and our European partners that are in Germany. And what it is it incorporates the tilt and turn hardware into a standard casement window. And what I mean by tilt and turn hardware is tilt and turn windows have what's called a corner drive. So that corner drive allows you to utilize the same hardware as a regular casement window, but it has a corner that lets you add multiple locking points along the top of the window. You can even technically carry this forward all the way around the window, but in theory, we only need just the locking point of the window to be stronger on the top. So any window that is greater than 84 inches in height automatically gets this hardware. Anything less than 84 inches in height, you have the ability to add it in yourself if the client finds it really intriguing and they like it. So the way that corner drive works is that last cam head that I had mentioned in a previous window that does not get used, this is where that cam head gets utilized. That cam head now becomes my attachment point for my extension. So this extension locks into this cam head, goes up to here. It's trimmable, so it depends on the height of the window. We can trim this down or make it longer. It attaches itself to this corner, or this portion of the corner drive. This is what we call a corner drive that also has another cam head in it. I can utilize this cam head for another locking point, and then it drives itself around. Another cam head attaches itself to this lock bar, and it opens up one additional cam head for me this far out into the window. So now I have an additional one that is very close to the top edge of the casement sash and another one on the top of the casement sash. So having these two here will bring in the sash so tight in the top corner that you should not see any push. So this second window to me here has that hardware attached to it. And if I didn't have that corner drive, I can apply pressure on the inside of the window and that thing would just completely bow out on the exterior. But having that corner drive there, no matter what I apply for pressure, that corner is tight. Now, if you keep your eye up here, I'm going to utilize the lock bar down at the bottom, and you'll see the movement, how everything moves. And here, that cam head will engage with a cam lock that we have at the very top of the sash. So as I operate the lock handle, you can see how the lock bar is moving up and down, but it's also attached to the extension. The extension is attached to the corner drive. Corner drive is attached to another lock bar, and I'm able to achieve multiple additional locking points at the very top of the window that are typically your fail points because they'll deflect really far out. To continue on with our 850 series Omega window, we have 6 different types of windows that you can sell that fall under the Omega family. And the 2 operating units that we've already talked about are your casement window. Casement windows are the ones that hinge left or hinge right, or your awning window, the ones that hinge from the bottom out. But there's 4 non-operating windows that you can get in the 850 Omega system. We've already talked about the direct set system, the direct set where the glass goes directly into the casement frame. When it goes directly into the casement frame, it makes common frame configurations really easy because I can use that casement frame on the entire perimeter of the window, break it up with mullions, put my casement sash on one side, make that the operating, and then anywhere that I don't have an operating unit, I can just put glass directly into the casement frame, hence the name direct set. The other 3 non-operating windows that we carry, and we're going to talk about 2 here. One is called a fixed frame, and one is called a fixed sash. So the difference between the 2, look-wise, they look identical. The advantage with having a fixed frame, and this is something Durabuilt is the only company that has this frame system, it is a much more robust, thicker frame that from the outside looks identical to a casement. So on this side we have a casement window, on this side we have a fixed frame. From the outside, the sight lines are identical. So when somebody's looking at the window from the outside, aside from a screen, they technically would not be able to tell the difference between a fixed frame and a casement window. The advantage with that is people like that sight line look where, everything lines up and everything looks the same. Having a fixed frame makes that unit much stronger, much bigger. You can utilize that and put much bigger and heavier glass into that frame. It also has the ability to go box to box. So as I mentioned over there, we talked about common frame configurations has 4 welds, top 2 and bottom 2. When you go but that has limitations where it limits you on the maximum width and the maximum height that you can make based on our machinery limitation. If you are building a unit that is bigger than those dimensions, then you have to go into a box-to-box combination. So what we're looking at here is a box-to-box window where we have a casement that is mulled box-to-box. In other words, I have a casement welded as a single box, and then I have a fixed frame that's welded as a single box, and you can see that with the corners, you have 45-degree welds on them, and then another casement here. The other hint that can help you to know if this is a box-to-box window or if it's a common frame window, box-to-box windows require a strip, we call it a mullion strip, that connects the two together. So in between them, they get sandwiched together. Sometimes we put steel, sometimes we don't. We screw them together, we put silicone, we sandwich them together, and then we put a little strip on the outside and the inside of the window to hold the two units together. When you're dealing with a box-to-box, that is the only way to put these two windows together. Now, one thing to note about the fixed frame, because the casement has a black weather strip that goes on the full perimeter of the sash, we utilized capstock capabilities. Capstock meaning actual black PVC goes through the material, not painted. It's an actual black PVC that goes through the material in that same groove, so that visually from the outside, you look at that window, you can't tell again which side has the weather strip, which side has the black paint. If you come close to it, you'll see the difference. But when you're far away from the window, anywhere more than a meter, I would say, it's very difficult to tell which side has the brush, which side has the paint. So that is one key advantage with going with the fixed frame. You get to have that larger unit. You get to have those larger box-to-box combinations. You can build them up to 168. In some scenarios, even bigger, but they do have to go to special workflow engineering to get the approval on them. But that is why we brought on this frame, is to be able to do those really large windows that most cannot achieve with the skinnier profiles that we have as well. So on the other side of the world, if somebody likes this look, but they want that common frame look where they don't have that little mullion strip that goes in between, their window size is still within the 125 machinery limitation, we have the ability to go and make it a common frame window. So when we build a common frame window, to my right over here, we have what's called a fixed sash over a casement window. So in this scenario, we have a casement next to a fixed frame. In this scenario, we have a fixed sash over a casement frame. So in this scenario here, it is 4 sides welded. You get one main frame on the full perimeter. And then what we do is we make 2 separate sashes. So one sash, we add the hardware to it and it operates. The second sash, we put clips between the frame and the sash that snap in and lock into place. And visually from the outside, they are literally now identical. We have a casement frame with a casement sash and another casement frame here with a casement sash. The difference is this guy has hardware to make him operate. This guy has a few screws and it's fixed into place. Between screws and clips, everything is fixed into place. So now the client got that same look that we had in the other window with the fixed frame and the casement frame, got that same sight line, but we had to go box to box over there. In this scenario, we can go common frame and get that same exact visual look. And now, if you do look closer, you will see that both sides have that brush weather strip on top piece and bottom piece. So because these units now become interior glazed, the water would get in between the glass and the sash, and we have holes that are underneath the sash where the water comes out. So we don't need any drain caps on the front of these because we're draining downwards. So the downward draining, we don't need to add any more pieces to it because they're already a hidden hole. Water can come out. Now the advantage with this, if you guys recall when we were talking about direct set windows, they're very difficult to replace the glass over time. So because the glass is on the outside, and if you're building a high-end home or even a commercial job, it's really hard to go outside and take the glazing stops out to replace the glass out. This is where you can utilize that same common frame look, but by adding the sash, instead of putting the glass directly into the frame and making it an exterior glazed, you can add the sash, and that puts the glazing stop on the inside. So now that same exact configuration that's over there that the customer liked because it's a nice clean finish and it's one frame welded, they can do this, put the glass on the inside of the window, and then now they can replace the glass anytime that they need to. So to cover the two really quickly, the two non-operating units that we're looking at here, one is a casement frame and one is a casement sash. A casement frame is a single piece square that you can drop the glass directly into it, and it can only be done in a box-to-box combination. I can't build a casement out of it. So in other words, I can't make it a common frame. Or we can go fixed sash, which is a two-part system. We take a casement frame, we take a casement sash, put them together, and we make a square. The same exact square that we're able to achieve with a single frame, we now have a casement frame, casement sash, and we get that same square that we're able to achieve out of the fixed frame. So out of the four non-operating units, we've now covered the direct set, the fixed frame, a fixed sash, and then the last one that we want to talk about is our picture window. Picture window, we'll show you guys the window there in a second. It is basically a much thinner profile of the fixed frame. So for that client that wants that more sight line and more glass, you can achieve that same look for them using a picture window. And if we look behind us, the last product that we want to talk about is our picture frame that completes the package for the 850 Omega system. So to reiterate again, I keep repeating this so that it's kind of embedded in your heads. The non-operating units are your fixed frame, your fixed sash, and your direct set. We've covered those three so far. The fourth one is our picture window. So for that client that wants more glass, more daylight, more, the thinnest reveal, the thinnest frame, this is the client that you want to approach with this picture window. So as you can see now, with the other windows that we were looking at, that operating and the non-operating always looked the same from the exterior. Looking at it from the outside, they're symmetric. You can't tell which one is the operating and which one is not. In this scenario, it's clear to tell which one is the operating and which one is not. So here we have an awning window, and awning windows typically come with two locking points, and they operate outwards from the bottom up. These are really great for anybody that's concerned about driving wind, driving rain, short walls, basement windows. That's where a lot of people like to put the awning windows in. But then above it, we have a picture window. And you can see how in a picture window, it is a much thinner profile that is not aligned with the operating unit below it. So picture windows are great if you want that extra sight line, that extra glass. Their limitation is you can't achieve really large units using this window. Because it's a thinner profile, it does tend to be a little bit weaker, so we try to avoid making really large units out of this system. The advantage with it being really skinny and small and thin is that you're able to achieve geometric shapes with it really nicely. With the fixed frame, we can cut it at different angles and weld it, and we can get the geometric shapes that you guys can see here today. But what you can't achieve with a fixed frame is any curved bend. So if you think about a square and you're trying to bend a square, it's very hard to bend it without warping the ends on it. But if you think about a thin rectangle, you can easily bend it along the thinner portion of the rectangle. And this is exactly what's happening here. So if we have a thin picture frame, as you go around, if you want to curve it, you have the ability to curve it and maintain its shape and integrity. So that's where the picture frame comes in really handy, is that you're able to get those custom shapes, those radiuses, those curves that some clients are looking for. So operating units, casements and awnings. Operating units, casements and awnings. Non-operating units are your picture frame, which is your skinny profile, your fixed sash, which is basically a casement frame and a casement sash put together, screwed shut. A fixed frame, which is a solid square, that's the one that you can achieve much bigger combinations, much bigger windows out of it. And then your direct set, which utilizes a casement frame and you drop the glass directly in it, put the glazing stops on from the outside, makes it an exterior glazed. Fastest and most economical combination is to use the direct set combination. Anytime you start adding box to box and things like that, it adds a lot more weld time and a lot more production time, so it does drive the price up. So if you're always trying to be on the economical side of things, a casement with a direct set is your best option. As long as you're able to change the glass from the exterior. Typically 2-story homes, new construction, that's what they're going for. It's the high volume builders, the lower cost, easy to replace if they ever have to replace it. That's where you would apply the direct set and the casement look. That's it.